What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. And this one I'm going to go over 5 running backs that I think have league-winning upside this season in fantasy football. I'll be trying to do a couple players that are getting drafted higher up in drafts and a couple sort of later round guys, so you can get a mix of maybe different ranges of outcomes for these guys. All these guys are guys that I think certainly have the possibility to be guys that make huge differences for your fantasy roster, but they're not necessarily guys that I'm projecting to do that. So I'll sort of touch on both of those things and explain what I think are realistic expectations versus what I think the upside is on these guys. I did a video on wide receivers just recently on this, so if you want to take a look at that, feel free to go do so. I think it'd be really useful. There's also plenty of other videos on the channel. I put out several videos a week, so if this is your first time here, thanks for stopping by. Please do subscribe to the channel if you feel like this is anything useful, and like the video if you can. It really helps with the algorithm. So yeah, with that, let's get into the first player. So one of the higher ADP running backs that I think does have a legitimate shot of still being a league winner this season is Nick Chubb. I think he's got a legitimate shot to be the running back one in fantasy this season. This Browns offense can really only improve from what they did at the end of the season last year. We would assume that Deshaun Watson's going to be better at least than he was last season. I don't think he'll return ever to that Houston Texan form of being a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but he's going to make this offense better than they were towards the end of last season. And I also think it's certainly possible that Sean Watson's just not as mobile as he used to be. He didn't run the ball quite as much as he did in Houston. And especially with the departure of Kareem Hunt, there's a very real opportunity there for there to be more running back targets in this offense. I don't think Jerome Ford is talented enough to really garner too many touches, especially compared to what Kareem Hunt was getting. So I think there's going to be a real opportunity for Nick Chubb to see a career high in targets this season. He's also just a really good player who potentially could see the highest volume of his career. He could very easily receive even more carries than he did last season. It's possible if you want to give him 21 carries per game. I'm projecting him for about 18 or 19, which has him statted out as my running back 4. But just bumping that up number just over 20 would stat him up as my RB2, just a hit behind Austin Eckler this season. So I think that it's actually really reasonable and easy to get Nick Chubb to be a top 3 running back this season. There's certainly opportunity for touchdown upside or more receptions or just more carries if they want to give him the Derrick Henry treatment in this offense. So there's a ton of upside here. He's an elite player. He's been very durable. He's super talented. I don't think you can really go wrong by drafting Nick Chubb, and I think there's just unreal upside with him this season. So he's a guy that I've been trying to get of a lot, especially given that he's just not that expensive given what his upside is. Next up here, I've got Tony Pollard. He was the running back 8 last season, even with Ezekiel Elliott on the roster, and he's now being drafted as the running back 9, which is just a little bit funny. I do actually have him statted out as my running back 10 with my projections, so I'm not exactly predicting him to finish as a top 5 running back, but I think he is another player that actually does have the running back 1 overall upside. Mike McCarthy said that he wants to be an even more run-heavy offense this year. That's why they passed on Kellen Moore. They moved on from him as our offensive coordinator. They brought in Brian Schottenheimer, who's always run a more run-centric offense. And on top of that, I think people are sort of overlooking the departure of Dalton Schultz for Dak Prescott in this offense. He's always been a really nice safety net for Dak. Without that there, I think there's going to be an opportunity for there to be more dump downs to the running back position. We know Tony Pollard's a really great receiving back, and this is also going to be an offense that's good enough to really allow for a spike TD production season in the past years, especially last year, even we saw Ezekiel Elliott get all that goal line work, which really sort of limited the upside of Tony Pollard. So if Tony Pollard can finish as a running back 8 while not getting goal line work, I think there's a real world here where he gets 5 more touchdowns than he did last year, and then you find himself even higher. On top of that, it's just sort of for a little bit of a comp. It feels a lot like what Eckler was after the departure of Melvin Gordon. He was always a guy that maybe he wasn't super involved on a total touches basis, but he's just been super efficient. And then he's had a little bit of a spike in touches. I think Tony Pollard has that sort of skill set. I think that even though the overall touches aren't going to be as high as some of the guys that we were projecting to finish in the top 5 running back position, he's a guy that could certainly be efficient enough to finish as the running back 1. So especially with where he's being drafted as like the end of the running back 1 tier. If I'm getting him as my running back 1, I'm fairly comfortable. I think he's going to be more than serviceable, and there's so much upside there that he could certainly be a guy that just wins you your league by having a sort of fantasy breaking season. Up next here, I've got a guy who's getting drafted much later in drafts. I have Kareem McKinnon here. He was ranked, or he scored the 5th most points at the running back position from week 10 on last season, which I think just got sort of overlooked. On top of that, he has re-signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's going to be obviously on an offense that's going to score near the top in the league. Pacheco, really, despite being a really talented running back, and I think a guy that's going to be a guy that can just hang around in this league for a while. I don't think he's a real threat to steal pass catching work. He received I think 12 targets last season, so there's no real worry for me that McKinnon loses that role. And on top of that, despite not being a very huge very big body. Jerick McKinnon does have real touchdown upside because of the Chiefs' approach to goal line work. They really love passing the ball down there, and that means that Pacheco kind of comes off the field for Jerick McKinnon to be used in those packages. So I mean, we saw McKinnon score touchdowns in like 5 or 6 straight weeks last season. He's actually a really good player. I've liked him for a while, and I think that it's hard to find pieces of this offense that are going to be involved in pretty much guaranteed touches, and you're getting it super late in drafts. He costs you basically nothing. He's being drafted at the running back 42 right now, and obviously he's shown that top five running back upside. He's not going to finish as a top five running back this season, but I think he's got a legitimate shot to be a running back two and a guy that you're more than comfortable drafting. If he's your running back four, I think you're super comfortable with him on your roster, and he's a guy that's definitely got weekly upside. Next up, I've got Antonio Gibson, and kind of here we go again. He's a guy that I've loved for several years now, and just haven't been able to really see him be utilized in a role that I think really would best suit him. But despite how I feel like he hasn't really been used the way he should be so far in his NFL career, he still posted 2 seasons at his first 3 years in the league as being a running back one for fantasy, and he's really only competing with Brian Robinson for touches in this offense. Brian Robinson, despite being a sort of a fun story last season, he really just wasn't that efficient. I don't think he's that great of a player. I also don't think he's at all a threat to start stealing pass catching work. So Gibson has received a ton of praise out of camp from Rivera and Eric Bieniemy, and they really love utilizing him. Bieniemy wants to utilize him as a pass catcher quite a bit. And on top of that, J.D. McKissic has gone from the roster this season. He was certainly a guy that sort of got in the way and muddied the waters there. So Antonio Gibson's going to see potentially 50 plus catches this season. He's always been a really efficient player. He's a really talented player, I think, especially if this offense can use him right. And if Eric Bieniemy can help take this offense to another level, maybe Jahan Dotson takes a step forward, maybe they get better quarterback play out of Sam Howell. This could be an offense and really a team that really surprises us. And if that's the case, then Antonio Gibson is actually an integral part of this offense. I think he's going to be a very useful running back. I think he's got a legitimate top 15 upside, and he's being drafted outside the top 30 at the running back position right now. So if he's my running back three, I'm pretty happy leaving drafts, and I think there is legitimate upside there. They have been linked to potentially signing Kareem Hunt. If that happens, I'd pretty much be out on Antonio Gibson here, but with the depth chart as it is, I think he does have that legitimate upside to be a top 15 guy. Up next, I've got Samaje Perine. That's will be the last running back that could be a league winner here. He's being drafted as the running back 35, so at the end of the running back 3 territory this season, and he's just a really quality player, especially in the pass catching department. In 2 starts last season in games that Joe Mixon missed, he scored 20.4 fantasy points per game. That's obviously enough to be running back 1. That'd put him like running back 2 if you scale that out for the whole season. And he's talented enough to be a full-time starter while Javonte Williams is injured. We know Javonte Williams is coming off a pretty nasty injury, so we don't really know when Javonte is going to be back. But if Javonte were to miss time, then there's a very real world where Samaje Perine is honestly a low-end running back 1 during the time that Javonte's out. And when Javonte comes back, I think it'll still be a timeshare. Perine will get a lot of the third down work, and if that's the case, we've seen Sean Payton lead offenses that can support 2 running backs. We saw it with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. We saw it with Pierre Thomas and Reggie Bush way back in the day. So plenty of running backs have succeeded in the Sean Payton offense. They love passing the ball to the running backs. I think Russ is going to do that quite a bit this season. And if that's the case, I think there's a ton of upside for this offense. It's going to be a lot better than it was last year. And Perine can easily be a top 20 running back this season. And there's certainly more upside, especially in games that Javonte misses. So that'll do it for this video on league winning running backs. If you like the video at all, if there are winning running backs that I didn't mention and you felt like should have been mentioned, or if there's any guys that you really disagree with, let me know in the comments. I'd love to interact with you guys and see what we have to just talk about there. If you liked the video, which I hope you did, especially if you made it this far, and please do take a minute to like it. It really helps with the algorithm. If it's your first time on the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. If you want more videos like this, just feel free to subscribe to the channel. You can click the bell so you get notifications when I put more videos out. I'll be putting several videos out a week up until the start of the season, and then even more once the season kicks off. So super excited for the NFL. It's coming around the corner. It's just a couple months now, and it's going to be a really fun off season. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.